Hello, everybody. I'm Natalie Valens, and welcome back to the Journeys of Success podcast, where we talk to influential women and discuss the impact they've had in the communities around them. We will talk about their career paths, how they got to where they are, and the impacts that they create in the communities they work with. So stay tuned, and they will answer the questions that you have prepared for them. Hello, and welcome to another empowering episode of our Journeys of Success podcast, created in honor of International Women's Day. This series is all about celebrating women who are breaking barriers, lifting others, and creating real change in the world around them. Today, we're joined by an inspiring guest, Sabrina Escalona. Sabrina is a dedicated environmental professional currently serving as a corporate secretary and nature-based water designer at Ecosenya Solutions. A chemical engineering graduate from the University of Philippines, Diliman, Sabrina has leveraged her technical expertise to advocate for sustainable water management practices. She has also been recognized as one of the 20 Filipino women champions in the water sector for 2024, reflecting her commitment to promoting gender equality in the environmental sector. In her role at Ecosenya, Sabrina focuses on designing nature-based solutions to address water security and environmental sustainability challenges. Her work involves coastal and climate risk assessments and water cycle restoration projects, ensuring that communities are better prepared for environmental changes. She is also a startup enthusiast and co-founder of Rainfold, a foldable rainwater harvesting system that aims to give Filipino communities access to clean rainwater. Sabrina's career exemplifies the transformative impact that emerges at the intersection of engineering, entrepreneurship, and environmental stewardship. And with that, we welcome you, Sabrina. Thank you for joining us today.
Hi, Natalie. So thank you so much for inviting me and to the whole BSM for hosting this Women's International podcast. So really happy to be here.
Amazing. Okay, perfect. Well, thank you for being here, and let's get started. So I would like to get started by getting to know you a little bit better. Can you share a little bit about your background and what inspired you to pursue a career in environmental engineering and sustainable water management?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so you can call me Sab for short. I go by Sab. I come from the Philippines, but I grew up in the US. So part of my career path, I think, would really be attributed to my childhood, which I would have to thank my dad for. So I grew up really in the outdoors with nature. I was playing in the dirt. Trees were my best friend. Because I was able to see and play with nature and the environment, I think this was what helped lead me to pursue a degree in chemical engineering, which at the time was the closest thing to environmental engineering because they didn't offer that course as an undergrad here in the Philippines. So I took up chemical engineering, and after graduating, I knew that I wanted to do something for the environment, but I didn't know exactly what, because there's so much that you could work with. You can work with renewable energy, waste, and you can work with water. And that's actually because I was able to take, eventually when I graduated, I was offered a career, not even as an engineer, but as a research assistant for Ecosenya Solutions, which is an environmental consultancy firm that really treaded my path towards water, and then specifically nature-based solutions for water. So yeah, I think that's how it all started out.
Right, perfect. That's a very meaningful start, and it's always inspiring to hear what drives someone to do the work they do.
Yeah.
What were some pivotal moments or projects in your career that solidified your passion for environmental protection?
Right. So, really from the get-go as a young girl, I already knew I wanted to work to protect our environment, right? And I think that my eyes were very much open to the field that I specifically wanted to work in, which is in water. Because when I started out my career as a research assistant, part of the things that we had to do was to go on field and we were working on a coastal and climate vulnerability risk assessment at the time for a specific coastal city in the Philippines. And as we were writing the research, we had to visit the area, and I saw firsthand the dump site, the amount of waste that was near the ocean, and then also the flooding concerns of the city. And this city was predominantly a fishing community, and you can see how the fishing community was very much affected by the flooding, the pollution in this specific coastal city, right? And I think that's what gave me that stark reality of this is very different from the childhood I grew up in and what I am seeing now. And as an engineer, you hear about these things theoretically, but when you see it firsthand, I think that's what makes it different when you finally realize, what does my country need help in? What does the environment need me for? And it was through this research assessment that I saw that one of the key things that we need in the environment is water. Water in a sense that we need to protect, not only protect and conserve our water resources, but also how do we continue to provide water for a growing population wherein there's threats against water pollution, water quality, and at the same time, water is decreasing in our country. And that project specifically opened my eyes to that. And then second was, after that, we did a design for a specific government project wherein a high school, a grade school to high school, had concerns with flooding. And because of that, the students couldn't use the restrooms. So you would think that using the restroom is a basic necessity and basic necessity that a lot of us don't think about. But for this specific school, these students had to leave their classrooms to get to the restrooms. But how might that look like when the water is flooded up to your knee level, right? And when we got to work with that, we actually use our nature-based lens. So we use the concept of how do we decrease flood waters in the school, but also how do we reuse that flood water so that we can use it to flush toilets, reuse it back into the bathrooms. And that kind of thinking, that kind of mentality really helped me realize that both engineering and the environment work hand in hand together when it comes to solving simple issues such as how do we use the bathroom, or giving students access to using the bathroom. So it's not just a black and white perspective of, okay, I will apply environmental engineering to this, I will apply chemical engineering, but it's very, I would say, relational as well, and nature-based and community-based. And that's what I think that's really what allowed me to love my work and love what I do at a deeper level.
Okay, thank you so much for sharing that. I'd love the audience to understand a little bit more on what your current role is in terms of the leadership that you have as the corporate secretary of nature-based water designer at Ecosenya. What are your primary responsibilities now?
Right. So because we are a fairly young consultancy firm with a lean team, so we're actually a team of 10, but then our core team is a team of 3. So I would think it's a bit different from BSM, wherein you have a large organization. So for us, we're really working with a small team. And because of that, we have a lot of roles. So it's not just because I am primarily a nature-based water designer, you end up taking up a lot of other key responsibilities, such as in admin work, such as taking down minutes, making sure all the information is processed and accessible by your whole team. But we also have engineering work, so doing particularly design work, figuring out what kind site assessments and the very technical side to things. But also you have the storytelling side to things, or the communication aspect. So all of this engineering and all of this design thinking is nothing if you can't communicate it to an audience. And my work goes into pitching to various stakeholders. It can be closed door meetings. It can also be open, public pitch setups, forums. So it really stems from admin to engineering to a lot of communications.
Okay, perfect. And
Mhm.
I'm really curious to know a little bit more on the nature-based water designer part. So it's not something that you hear every day, right? So what does it really mean to be a nature-based water designer? And how does this role really contribute to your overall mission or your goals?
That's a great question, actually. Now that you asked that, so when we were early on, when we were still trying to figure out, well, what are we specifically doing? We actually had to coin this profession, right? So we coined the nature-based water designer, and it's because nature-based solutions are an up-and-coming thing worldwide, and currently they're it's still growing. It's a growing body of knowledge, and I think a lot of people not just in the Philippines, but in other countries, are still figuring out what does nature-based solutions mean? How can it fit into our world today? And also, what are the kinds of professions, right, that can come into a nature-based designer? And so specifically because we were working in the field of water, water supply and also rainwater collection and nature-based water filtration systems, we thought, well, I think it would be safe to call us nature-based water designers, right? And part of my mission, my personal mission, I would say, is to be able to create water security for my country. And my role as a nature-based water designer helps me do this by being able to see that the gap that that I am trying to solve really is that my country is losing water. We do not have enough access to water, especially because our population is growing. But then that begs the question of why is that if we always have so much rain? In the Philippines, we are actually gifted to become we are part of the top 5 most rain abundant countries in the whole of Southeast Asia. So also with the new climate trends, we are not going to be running out of rain. In fact, there will be even a greater extreme amount of rain that we might be experiencing because of climate change. And so this makes me wonder, well, if there's so much water, why is it that we're dealing with water scarcity in my country? And that's when I realized that my mission is to be able to help collect rain, help infiltrate it back into our aquifers, our groundwaters, so that we can create a circular supply of water, just like what the water cycle naturally intends to do. And so I think that's what I'm trying to do now personally, and then also in my career as a water designer.
Okay, perfect. And to add to that, just to give the audience a little bit of an understanding of maybe some projects that you do, could you share a successful project that you had that made an impact?
Sure. Okay. So I know it's quite new to talk about like what we do, but when we talk about what we do, we call it water cycle restoration. So we're trying to because we are working with nature, we're trying to restore once again the broken water cycle, right? And our water cycle actually has various parts of it. There's the evaporation part, there's the precipitation, the infiltration. So it's very grade 5 basic understandings. But then when you fuse that with the idea of, wait, why are there certain parts in our country when we're dealing with water scarcity, you realize there are gaps in the water cycle. And as an engineer, you try to fill those gaps. Part of the gaps that we're trying to fill is in terms of the supply side, meaning how do we harness and collect the rain that falls into our land, that instead of it becoming flood waters, how might we make it something of an asset and a resource to be used to provide drinking water to our country, right? Mm-hmm. And one of the projects that we did, which I'll go back to that school, the school for the students, which had a lot of flooding. They had a lot of flooding in their property and they couldn't use their restrooms because it would be a social problem just trying to get to the restrooms. We did the specific design for this. And as a consultancy firm, we do the design and then we hire third-party contractors to implement the design under our project management, right? So we finished the design for this, and its intended benefits are to be able to not just decrease flood levels from knee level then down to ankle levels, but also to be able to recycle flood waters into bathrooms. And we did this by utilizing green spaces. So there's a field in the school that the students would usually play on. They would use it for the graduation ceremonies. So it's important that the field would remain intact, that we wouldn't change it such that their activities wouldn't change as well. So what we did is we created an underground harvesting well in the field. We basically excavated the land and put up biofilters underground that would collect the floodwaters underground and then have it pumped back after filtration to the restrooms of 3 buildings so that it can provide for the water of the toilets of the students, thereby opening up more restrooms so that they don't have to use the outside or out of building restrooms anymore. And that would solve not just the flooding issue, but also the issues of bathroom accessibility and also the issues of beautification. So we're able to create an aesthetic field playing space for them by utilizing natural earthworks and plants and plants that can help take up the floodwaters and filter the floodwaters. So we have a bunch of multifunctional plants and excavations and earthworks in place. So I would say this shows that in a simple setting as a school, you can actually start implementing nature-based solutions, because part of the concept of nature-based solutions is that it doesn't have to be a big space. You don't have to be working with a big ecosystem just for you to create a solution. You can be working in as small as your backyard or even as small as a field in the school for you to start working with nature and creating solutions that benefit both humans and nature as well.
Okay, perfect. That's a very impactful and beautiful project. I didn't know that was even possible to do something like this.
Yeah.
So, Sab, beyond your technical work, you're also a strong advocate for gender equality. How is gender inequality manifested in the environmental sector? Are there certain steps being taken at the moment to address it?
Mm-hmm. All right. So I think I can only speak for the water sector wherein I work in, right? And for gender inequality issues here, well, for me, one, I'm very blessed because the team that I work with is actually predominantly women-led. So in our team of 10, 70%, so 7 of us are actually women. And a lot of my mentors, right? I'm very blessed because my mentors are also women. And so I think that growing up with a very tough team of women inspired me a lot to be able to see that I'm no different from any gender, right? And there are a lot of gender inequality issues when it comes to, let's say, board meetings. So it's usually male dominated, walking into other meetings wherein I would be the only female. But I never felt like that was something threatening, I would say, because of the women role models I had who made me confident enough to know that it's not my gender which dictates what I can do, but really my skill set and the knowledge and the love that I have for the work that I do. And so some steps that are being taken to address this is there's actually been fellowships now, like what I've joined, the first ever Women Champions in the Water Sector Fellowship that was created by an NGO, a foundation by our previous female vice president here in our country. And it put together a band of 20 women every year from all various water sectors all around the country so that we can create this group that helps one another, shares ideas, collaborates on different projects, and helps us know that we're not alone in the work that we do. And also, I know that there's a lot of rules now in board for board of trustees, wherein a certain percentage has to be by women. So there's a lot of protection for gender equality in this space as well. But also a
Okay,
lot to
perfect.
still be done.
Yes, no, for sure.
Yeah.
um, let's talk a little bit about the challenges you faced along the way. What would you say are some of the biggest challenges you faced in your career as a woman?
hmm Right. So I think that I would go back to challenges, not just as a woman, also, but as a young professional who's working in a new field, right? It's a very new field in the Philippines. And what I remember, I will never forget how I was very young at the time, a fresh graduate, and I walked into this agricultural meeting on a farm, but they were all men, and they were all much older, more experienced men, and I was a young female trying to find my path in the world, and I didn't know what I could contribute. But I think what I got out of that is that there's a lot of, I think that's why there's a huge importance on gender equality, because there's a lot of opinions on how we deal with, let's say, food and, let's say, water, from different mindsets and different experiences. And as a young female, my experiences, I feel like, what are unique in a sense to that group, who have been working in the agricultural industry for business, let's say. But then when you put together other people from other walks of life, like, let's say, young students who have been coming from school, and we see that food isn't just something that can be taken from a business perspective, but something that can be approached with a necessary it's a necessity for communities to thrive, then that's how we're able to create better and more meaningful projects because of the different points of view. And so I think that the challenge that I had there was really growing up, trying to find my place, trying to find my voice as to what did I want to say, what kind of story did I want to tell, until I found that it's the story that we can solve our water scarcity issues. And that is if we solve our water supply issues. That is if we start to rethink what we do with our abundant rain and how we can optimize its use for, let's say, providing water, drinking water, or providing toilet flushing water, providing other avenues of water. So it was really a growing up thing. But then I would feel like now I'm sort of getting my feet in the water, so to say, and finding myself in this and paving the path towards what I kind of envision this field to be.
Okay, perfect. And how do you see the role of women as a whole evolving in the water sector?
hmm Right. So why I love working with women as well is because when we see water for its value and not just its asset, right? Not
Mhm.
just something that's supposed to be extracted, but something that can truly provide life. And that's why I am working in the water sector, is because I firmly believe that without water, there is no life. That water runs our economy, water runs our agriculture, water runs our businesses. And how I see women being able to contribute in this sector, and taking on leadership roles, is that women, especially because of our roles in communities and in our roles as educators, we have that unique and intrinsic capacity to see water for what it truly is and how it interacts with our day-to-day life. Um, you see that there are a lot of girls who don't get to go to school because they have to pump water for their communities, while their brothers and their cousins who are boys can go to school, right? And because of just that basic experience of knowing what it's like to pump water, to walk to pump water, come back, and then use that water for your household needs, I feel like becomes a leadership strength when it comes to leading your community and when it comes to leading corporate or it comes to leading your team, because you understand now that water shouldn't just be conserved, but then water is should also be kept pristine. It should be continuously recharged we shouldn't just be extracting it for our own personal use. We should also be allowing other future generations and other communities to be able to have access to this water. And that's why it's very, our current Department of Environment and Natural Resources Secretary, I'm very proud to say, is also a female. And so you see that more and more women are actually taking on leadership roles here in our country for not just the water sector, but also in the environmental sector.
Okay, thank you so much for sharing. I would like us to look a little bit in the future now. What are your long-term goals at Ecosenya, and what impact do you hope to achieve in the Filipino community?
Right. Okay. So I think it all boils back down to my mission. What I would love to see in the future is truly a circular water supply. I work a lot with the water cycle, right? And the water cycle doesn't speak because it's a natural system. And so my goal is to be able to speak on behalf of the water cycle. And part of being able to speak on its behalf is to listen to the water cycle, to see what are the gaps in that system, in that cycle, and what can I do as an engineer, as a water professional to help solve those gaps, right? And what we talk a lot in the sustainability space, we talk a lot about circularity. And the water cycle is a circular cycle, right? And to truly be circular, for me, is to be able to see my country, not to see my country having a water balance between extraction and recharging. So to see in the future that we're not just extracting water from deep wells and from our dams, but being able to recharge and replenish the same amount and even more back into our groundwater, back into our main sources of water supply, so that it's an even balance, a circular balance of extraction of water, but also recharge of water. And in that way, we'll be able to create a sustainable and circular supply of water for future generations to come. And so what I hope to see for my community here in the Philippines is, I hope to see no more water scarcity. I hope that every Filipino has access to drinking water. And I hope that every Filipino will not have to make it a problem anymore for them to have water. Because as I've mentioned, we have so much water, right, from our rain. It's just a matter of how do we now utilize this? How do we collect it? And how do we recycle it in order to benefit our community?
Okay. Got it. And this is the last question that we received from the audience. So since this podcast was created in honor of International Women's Day, what advice would you give to young women professionals who are aspiring to make a significant impact in their careers like you did yourself?
Oh, okay. I love this question. I would say to the many young women professionals out there and who are also listening to this podcast, first of all, thank you for listening up until this point. But also second is, don't forget how important and critical you are in your field of expertise, right? I would say don't be afraid to pave a path that is not there. To dream big and to be able to learn what truly are your strengths, what are your dreams, and then how do you converge that into your career and into your profession so that you can create benefits, not just for you personally in your own career path, but also for all the people who depend upon your expertise and who depend upon your dreams to make impact in your space. So never give up and don't be afraid, especially when it gets confusing out there. There's a lot of rules that a lot of the times are paved for us. But I would say don't be afraid to pave your own path, especially because the world is evolving at this point. And there's a lot of new industries up and coming. And this is an opportunity, I would say, to be able to create the most out of this changing space. So good luck to all young women professionals out there. And I'm rooting for you as well.
Thank you so much, Sab, for sharing your journey and your insights and your passion with us today. What you do is really a powerful reminder of when innovation meets purpose, real change is possible. And you've shown us that leadership rooted in empathy and in action can truly transform communities and, well, hopefully also inspire future generations. So thank you very much for taking the time today and for answering all the questions from our audience.
Yeah, thank you so much for all those questions and for taking the time to share my story. Also, I can't wait to hear about the stories of the other women you'll be having interviewed on this podcast.
Thank you.